And with that, let's start. So hello, everybody. Welcome to Superpower of Visuals. I am Ines Garcia. I'm an inventor because I do invent things for a living. I think we all do. We shouldn't forget the creative side of the work that we do. And for the ones that may not know, I actually studied art for 2 years before uni. If you thought that, Ines, Salesforce, this is going to be about agile, it's not this time. But don't you worry, you can go to this URL and pick up a free course from me, so that you don't miss out if that's the content that you wanted for today. I expected some of it. Let's thank the sponsors to help us to make sure that Spark Dreaming can happen. Really, sponsors makes a big difference in the Trailblazer community and all the initiatives that we get involved with. So thanking each one of them. Do take a minute today to go and check out their booth and what they have to offer. All right. So jumping into the content. So if you didn't know, most of our brain processes information through visuals. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it in the way that we have evolved. Humans, we have been communicating for more than 30,000 years. And the written word has only been around about 3,500 of those. So from evolutionary side of things, we're just so much better at dealing with visuals than we are with text. So from prehistoric cave paintings to things like maps or tube maps, rail maps. This is the London Underground map. To also images and diagrams and charts. All those things have long been part of the human storytelling. Just here, we are looking at lucid charts. Salesforce have some elements over there, release some different items that you can use. If you use lucid chart, do get the bundle because it's definitely worth it. And you also have some architecture templates that you can pull and get you started. So I'm just going to add a link just there in the chat if you want to have a look. So get ready. I'm going to give you lots of links today. Here we're looking at data model. Can also be for like single or multi-org architecture. You can use all these diagrams and visuals for an integration layer. So lots of things. Really, our brain is wired to handle visuals because seeing comes before words. Kids look and recognize before they're able to speak. So if you are not making the most out of visuals, then you may want to start. Because what if I told you that half of your brain, only using half of your brain at work? Because over half of the brain is used to process visual information. It's important to understand that unless our words and concepts, ideas are hooked onto an image, they basically go through one ear, sail through the brain, and live through the other ear. Images are instantaneous without that weight that language would bring. And there is this saying of a picture is worth 1,000 words and is there for a reason. A study found that 2/3 of employees are able to understand things so much better by visuals when they presented with visuals. The unfortunate truth is that half of the companies in the study rely on plain text. And think about how you perform every day. How is that communication happening? Emails, direct messages. Right? Another study So that 20% of text is remember versus 50% of visual, right? So if you want something to stay there for longer, then visuals are your friends. So to make most of our ability to understand the information, we need to appeal to the side of the brain that processes visual. Because, a bit of a joke, but shall I ask, what does happen when we are presented with something like this? Not just at the individual level, in the room, behaviorally. Words are processed by our short-term memory. And short-term memory is very useful. Right? It has its uses, like how to go back to a specific place. So if you need to remember verification code from your phone into your desktop. And short-term memory is fantastic because our brain can only hold about 7 bits of information at once, right? So short-term memory can discard items that are no longer needed and avoid information overload for the brain. Have you ever been in a meeting that this sort of happens, right? At the end of the meeting, somebody wants to wrap up and ask questions such as, do we have an agreement? Does everybody have clarity? Yeah? Are we sure what we're doing next? And there is a common consensus in the room. Oh, yeah, sure, yeah, of course. Yeah. Yet, after that, everybody goes off in their own diversion and take what just happened or what should happen. And I kind of covered this a little bit more in my Salesforce Agile book. Visuals is how we process, how we store, and how we recall information. And when we combine visuals and words, we augment the understanding. It's like an increase of bandwidth sort of thing. So we can synthesize more information. All these drawings, visualization, charts, images, graphics, diagrams, icons, all that really help us to do these things. It helps us to clarify, to order, to comprehend, to associate things, to process, digest, store, find patterns. And for me, one of the greatest advantages that really empower us to do it to co-create in a way that you just wouldn't be able to do with text. Right? Co-create or procreate, coming together and building up something better than just the simple sum of the parts. And in the work that we do, we are responsible for trillion things. So the customer data strategy, the flow of information between systems and the overall data model, the design of workflows and experiences, and that's across systems, and well, the overall solution architecture. Now, when infusing visuals, when doing these things, some items, words of advice. Avoid making things complex, right? Easy, the KISS principle. Avoid things that's going to be hard to maintain. Also avoid org or data silos when you're doing that. And also technical debt. And avoid quick fixes because they always come back and bite us. Right? So, what do we draw? Even though you're not a self-acclaimed artist, I'm not, you can do this, right? Your drawing doesn't have to be pretty, one, because pretty is way too subjective, but also the aim here is for something simple and to bring clarity. So what to draw? Draw your who's, right? Identify elements that are involved. So if you are becoming overwhelmed with a conversation or information getting through, or when reading a document, something like that, just get down everything that you are dealing with. Just draw your who's. Draw the where. Map out what is happening. This is going to show you how all the different elements, all the who's are connected, and the impact that they have with each other. Draw the how many. Chart. This gives you an idea of numbers, of volume. what is involved. And that's going to give you a bit of perspective. What are we dealing with here, really? And draw the when, your timeline. So if you're putting together a plan, timing is really important, right? Time is perishable. So seeing it visually really helps, right? Are we plotting the things, too many things at once? Are there some spaces? How can we make this that is actually feasible and reasonable? And these are just the basics, right? You can draw your start and end. Here you're going to start saying some elements that are part of functionality and tools that we have at hand. Right? A start and an end. You draw your actors, right? The actors of stock, the in or outflow of flows, information, stock. So a dot, a square, the arrows, and decision elements. Draw it as a diamond. And that becomes really powerful, especially when you're doing some sort of process or some sort of logic, a picture of it, because we tend to think on a very happy path. When this happened, this is some logic, and then this happened. But what if the logic doesn't equal true? Even that do nothing, having that gap, having that visually, that's going to inform, that's going to surface that that's the case, and that's just good enough. So infuse your decision elements. And then you can also draw loops, right? And that's either reinforcing loops or balancing loops. Maybe a systems thinking talk another day around loops. And the last thing is really boundaries, right? Encompassing sort of circles, areas so you can group things together and give some boundaries to systems, elements, apps, solutions, landscape. So when I was looking at the different things I use the most in terms of visuals, 3 themes came up. One is about how much I use decisions, how much I use visuals to help us to make decisions, to help us to determine impact, to give us context, and to find out constraints. The 5 O's. Showing it visually is going to give us options. It's going to surface observations. We're going to find out outliers. We may see overlap of items and ultimately outcomes, right? Where we want to go. So here on the right, you have an example. So how of the card game for teams that I invented a few years back, it does exactly that. It quiets common wisdom, and in an instant, we can see observations so that we can make a decisions where we want to go as a team. What can we try? So from some theory, I'm giving you some examples, real things that I'm using it. So for example, you can use a matrix to help you to make decisions. I use this a lot when we may be looking to add an application from external vendor marketplace. Before I go out there and I see flashy new things, get distracted with the art of the possible, before any of them, plot down your variables. What are all the things that you want that app to do for you, right? Variable, it can be how it handles custom objects, certain limits, or even pricing. Just variable 1, 2, 3, plot them down. And then once you've done that, then go to the marketplace. Who fits what I need the thing to accomplish, right? And how well it fits. Visuals here are colors. Very good, medium red, right? And so we can see as a team and can help us to make decisions, right? How important is variable 6? Another way of matrix, this is basically from Trailhead. I split the table in 2, but it's about internationalization for commerce. And you have a few different ways to look at it, right? How it's going to be handled in different currencies, how flexible I am in the way that I customize it, how many number of sites I'm going to have, all sorts of different things. So having this, I'll probably infuse it with visuals in a way that is structured so that you can make a decision. another matrix example. Why not? It's about a renewal. So this was coming time of a renewal of one of the products we were using, had different sections, and we quickly plot and look what do we use, what we like, we don't like, and really help us to inform the conversation in terms of renewal. And it doesn't have to be all matrices. It just seems to happen that I had all of this at hand, and I use them a lot. So here you have an example of and our project started last year, and very rare project because it's a startup and we have a blank canvas, zero technology, just an idea. And that's a fantastic place to be. And very rare, no legacy technology. Every conversation would lead us to more options, more possibilities, more potential byproducts, right? All this, the options are endless, and this is great. Now, what do we need to do? What is the bare minimum we can do to prove this idea in the market, right? To prove us wrong. And we have different ways to look at it, right? We could have a hub where multiple different entities are interacting with, or we could have, let's say, an instance where gets or multi-instance with different packages, if we talk it on sort of Salesforce context. Or we could have an orchestrator, and then that goes and handles information to networks and somewhere else. So having this in a visual manner, all the different actors and how would they interact, it gives us the ability as a team to look at the different challenges and look at the different benefits and ultimately to make a decision. Theme 2, which is about using visuals as an information radiator. An information radiator is like a big visual, a chart, right? So it can be, it's prominent and can be seen. It's a macro view, it's a quick digest. And you can approach information radiators in multiple different ways. Some are here on the left. So you could look at Scrooge, that's how I call it, but essentially it's your visual split in 3 columns. One is going to be about the past. Where were you, or where you are at and you're moving away. Then the present, where are you right now and where you are getting close to. And then the future, right? How is the vision looking like? So hence Scrooge, past, present, future. You could also use things like mind maps or spider maps. You can use swim lanes, you can use mappings. Here on the right, we have a bit of a flavor of a very common practice in the Agile arena, which is value stream mapping. We tend to look at it to reduce waste of time. I argue that we should be looking at other ways such as energy and materials and transport and things like that. So this information radiator. You could also use information radiators like to find patterns. Here we have an example of a team I was working with for 12 weeks. We took snapshots of our burn down, put them all together so that we could quickly digest and see and ask ourselves as a team, what do we see here? What are common patterns? Why this happened? How would we like this to look like? What can we try? Patterns, super powerful. Another way you could be looking at it is at aggregating data. Same thing than before. We looked and say, where do we put our efforts? Look at epics. Epics in the Agile jargon is basically a bundle of work, a theme of the work. So here we could see that a lot of our heart, intelligence, mind, soul, and efforts, they were going to BAU. What is BAU? Right? The dangers of putting miscellaneous or other pick list and selection options. What is really there? Where should our mind, heart, efforts, and time should be on? How can we shift? So at a glance, it gives us this ability to talk and make decisions. And then the third thing, which is about logic and systems, that gives you, with visuals, the ability to process things instantaneously. Now, visual, I made that up. Using visuals is going to surface voids, the spaces. Going to bring ideas. It's mainly going to tell you a story. It is universal, so anybody can pick it up and understand it. That's the aim. Now, when doing so, make it actual. It's very easy to draw how we would like the things to be or operate, or how we design it ideally to work. Help yourself and make sometimes the ugly truth of how it is right now. And essentially, it's giving you this logic. Who knows, by any chance, what's the image on the right? Does anybody know what it is? Just pop it in the chat. Any guesses? Okay, I tell you. So the image here. So once upon a time, the legend tells us that Mark Benioff was, I don't know, in a restaurant or in a bar, speaking with the CEO of luxury high street retail brand. Picked up a napkin, Mark, and a pen, and drew this. Draw the concept of the customer 360, right? So the customer is at the heart of whatever we do, regardless of how many applications and integrations of information we have around. And the legend tells us that that conversation, that visual, how we infuse the conversation, landed a very nice contract. So visuals do matter. Now, here are some examples of things. This one is a very brief attempt of converting my card game into a digital format. Now, in this scenario, we were not looking at Salesforce technology. And I must admit, in Salesforce world, we are really nicely accustomed that the different layers of technology are quite nicely done together. In this scenario of more traditional technology development, you have some quite separate layers of technology that you need to design. So if you look at the legend here, all the different actions are purple, front end pages will be green, some back end processing is yellow, and then some things that we run on client was blue. Visual representation of the process and where does it sit. Another example here, this is from the developer documentation. We have an example of the integration using the remote calling pattern. Imagine how would it look like if we use words to explain this instead of images. That way. And here another example of using visuals to explain a bigger picture, the sample landscape of technology. This is from a client of mine a few years back. We have Winnels here, our imaginary customer, and she goes through 3 phases. You go through the acquiring, right? We sell the different devices. It comes into multiple different channels, goes through an orchestrator of information. So I know all this is happening, going through all this different technology, and then moves into the fulfillment so that she actually gets the different products at home and delivered. They can be connected with her phone in the IoT platform. And we get to bill and handle all the especially funny, interesting taxes in the US, so that we can bill, we can get paid for the different products. And then the last sort of section is all how we support and the inline time that the customer, once they have already fulfilled the products, connect everything, and we build and everything is fine. How can we support it in life? And I used to use this a lot when we had a new team member or somebody from teams that we were working with quite closely It gave me a great opportunity to have a little coffee, introduce each other, and introduce the landscape of what we were dealing with. Right? Very quick, you get to absorb lots of information and get that picture that then you can recall. So if you're in a situation like this, right, it's becoming a bit difficult to explain with words or text or documents, infuse with visual, because nothing captures, focuses, calms, and builds connection in a way that an image does, especially a live one, if you are drawing it together, that concept of co-create, procreate. I really believe that visuals are now more important than ever. And use the tools that you have at hand. You don't have to get anything else. Whatever your team is already using, most likely you're going to have something that you can do visuals together with. And try it. And let me know how your experiments go. So I look forward to hear from this. Now, I wanted to share one more thing, which is this link over here. So we had quite interesting session about meeting visual note taking. So if you're interested to continue learning on the subject, just jump there and watch. Sren did a fantastic session on the subject. And last but not least, we need to find out who won the raffle.